May 2nd, 1945. 7:10 a.m. A shattered city in Central Europe. The gunfire has stopped. That alone feels unnatural. The street lies quiet beneath a low, colorless sky, rubble piled along the sidewalks like frozen waves. A tram sits abandoned at an angle, its windows blown out, wires dangling uselessly above it. Somewhere in the distance, a door bangs in the wind. That's all. No artillery, no mortars, no shouting. You can almost feel the city holding its breath. Sergeant Daniel Weiss steps out from behind a sandbagged checkpoint that has guarded this intersection for weeks. His boots crunch softly on broken glass as he crosses the street, rifle slung loose for the first time in days. The tension in his shoulders has eased without him noticing. He didn't give himself permission to relax. It just happened. Everyone feels it. For the last 48 hours, rumors have moved faster than bullets. Radio intercepts, half-heard broadcasts, civilians whispering from doorways. Hitler is dead. Berlin has fallen. The war is ending, maybe already over. Men repeated quietly, like a prayer they don't want to scare away. Weiss watches a group of soldiers across the square lighting cigarettes openly, no longer shielding the flame. One laughs. It sounds strange in this place, like a foreign language. A corporal has unbuttoned his jacket despite standing in open ground. Checkpoint discipline loosens in small human ways. Barricades shift just enough to widen gaps. Machine guns remain in place, but no one grips them tightly anymore. Patrols shorten their routes. The city, battered and exhausted, seems to accept this as permission to exhale. A white cloth flutters from a third-floor window down the street. Someone notices. Someone nods. No one fires. Weiss leans against the stone wall of a bombed-out storefront and rubs his eyes. He hasn't slept properly in days. None of them have. The idea that this could finally be done presses down on him harder than fear ever did. Done means alive. Done means home. Nearby, Lieutenant Karl Meyer studies a map spread across the hood of a Jeep. He's younger than Weiss, but looks older now, his face carved sharp by months of fighting. He traces a finger along a road leading out of the city, then taps the paper once, decisively. We pull back to secondary positions. No point holding intersections if there's nothing left to fight. No one argues. They've been ordered to expect surrender, to avoid unnecessary engagements, to preserve life where possible. It's what everyone wants. A white cloth flutters from a third-floor window down the street. Someone notices. Someone nods. No one fires. Weiss leans against the stone wall of a bombed-out storefront and rubs his eyes. He hasn't slept properly in days. None of them have. The idea that this could finally be done presses down on him harder than fear ever did. Done means alive. Done means home. Nearby, Lieutenant Karl Meyer studies a map spread across the hood of a Jeep. He's younger than Weiss, but looks older now, his face carved sharp by months of fighting. He traces a finger along a road leading out of the city, then taps the paper once, decisively. We pull back to secondary positions. No point holding intersections if there's nothing left to fight. No one argues. They've been ordered to expect surrender, to avoid unnecessary engagements, to preserve life where possible. It's what everyone wants. A white cloth flutters from a third-floor window down the street. Someone notices. Someone nods. No one fires. Weiss leans against the stone wall of a bombed-out storefront and rubs his eyes. He hasn't slept properly in days. None of them have. The idea that this could finally be done presses down on him harder than fear ever did. Done means alive. Done means home. Nearby, Lieutenant Karl Meyer studies a map spread across the hood of a Jeep. He's younger than Weiss, but looks older now, his face carved sharp by months of fighting. He traces a finger along a road leading out of the city, then taps the paper once, decisively. We pull back to secondary positions. No point holding intersections if there's nothing left to fight. No one argues. They've been ordered to expect surrender, to avoid unnecessary engagements, to preserve life where possible. It's what everyone wants. A white cloth flutters from a third-floor window down the street. Someone notices. Someone nods. No one fires. Weiss leans against the stone wall of a bombed-out storefront and rubs his eyes. He hasn't slept properly in days. None of them have. The idea that this could finally be done presses down on him harder than fear ever did. Done means alive. Done means home. Nearby, Lieutenant Carl Meyer studies a map spread across the hood of a Jeep. He's younger than Weiss, but looks older now, his face carved sharp by months of fighting. He traces a finger along a road leading out of the city, then taps the paper once, decisively. We pull back to secondary positions. No point holding intersections if there's nothing left to fight. No one argues. They've been ordered to expect surrender, to avoid unnecessary engagements, to preserve life where possible. It's what everyone wants. A white cloth flutters from a third-floor window down the street. Someone notices. Someone nods. No one fires. Weiss leans against the stone wall of a bombed-out storefront and rubs his eyes. He hasn't slept properly in days. None of them have. The idea that this could finally be done presses down on him harder than fear ever did. Done means alive. Done means home. Nearby, Lieutenant Carl Meyer studies a map spread across the hood of a Jeep. He's younger than Weiss, but looks older now, his face carved sharp by months of fighting. He traces a finger along a road leading out of the city, then taps the paper once, decisively. We pull back to secondary positions. No point holding intersections if there's nothing left to fight. No one argues. They've been ordered to expect surrender, to avoid unnecessary engagements, to preserve life where possible. It's what everyone wants. A white cloth flutters from a third-floor window down the street. Someone notices. Someone nods. No one fires. Weiss leans against the stone wall of a bombed-out storefront and rubs his eyes. He hasn't slept properly in days. None of them have. The idea that this could finally be done presses down on him harder than fear ever did. Done means alive. Done means home. Nearby, Lieutenant Carl Meyer studies a map spread across the hood of a Jeep. He's younger than Weiss, but looks older now, his face carved sharp by months of fighting. He traces a finger along a road leading out of the city, then taps the paper once, decisively. We pull back to secondary positions. No point holding intersections if there's nothing left to fight. No one argues. They've been ordered to expect surrender, to avoid unnecessary engagements, to preserve life where possible. It's what everyone wants. A white cloth flutters from a third-floor window down the street. Someone notices. Someone nods. No one fires. Weiss leans against the stone wall of a bombed-out storefront and rubs his eyes. He hasn't slept properly in days. None of them have. The idea that this could finally be done presses down on him harder than fear ever did. Done means alive. Done means home. Nearby, Lieutenant Carl Meyer studies a map spread across the hood of a Jeep. He's younger than Weiss, but looks older now, his face carved sharp by months of fighting. He traces a finger along a road leading out of the city, then taps the paper once, decisively. We pull back to secondary positions. No point holding intersections if there's nothing left to fight. No one argues. They've been ordered to expect surrender, to avoid unnecessary engagements, to preserve life where possible. It's what everyone wants. A white cloth flutters from a third-floor window down the street. Someone notices. Someone nods.
No one fires. Weiss leans against the stone wall of a bombed-out storefront and rubs his eyes. He hasn't slept properly in days. None of them have. The idea that this could finally be done presses down on him harder than fear ever did. Done means alive. Done means home. Nearby, Lieutenant Carl Meyer studies a map spread across the hood of a Jeep. He's younger than Weiss, but looks older now, his face carved sharp by months of fighting. He traces a finger along a road leading out of the city, then taps the paper once, decisively. We pull back to secondary positions. No point holding intersections if there's nothing left to fight. No one argues. They've been ordered to expect surrender, to avoid unnecessary engagements, to preserve life where possible. It's whatever.
The firefight collapses as quickly as it began. Not because the danger has passed, but because confusion outruns aggression. Smoke hangs low over the avenue, drifting through shattered windows and doorways like something alive. Weiss presses his back against a chunk of fallen masonry, chest rising and falling hard. His ears ring. Somewhere nearby, a man is yelling for a medic. Somewhere else, someone is laughing, a short, sharp sound that breaks off abruptly, as if the person realized how wrong it was. The enemy figures withdraw into the rubble almost as suddenly as they appeared. No coordinated assault, no follow-through. Just a reminder. Weiss peeks around the corner, rifle steady now, eyes searching for movement. Nothing. Only the city again, damaged, hollowed, uncertain. "What the hell was that?" someone mutters. No one answers. The radio crackles again, but this time there is no clear command, just fragments, overlapping voices, units asking for clarification that never comes, reports of sightings that don't align, a warning here, a denial there. The fog of war thickened by hope. Lieutenant Meyer gathers the squad behind the checkpoint, forcing order back into men whose emotions have already moved on. "Listen," he says, voice firm but controlled. "We hold until we're told otherwise. No assumptions, no shortcuts." A few heads nod, others don't. Because assumptions are everywhere now. For days, surrender rumors have traveled through the ranks faster than official orders ever could. Some of them came from intercepted broadcasts, some from civilians who swore the fighting was finished in the next district, some from soldiers who wanted it to be true badly enough to repeat it. Weiss remembers the night before, men sitting in the dark, sharing stories of home with a looseness that hadn't existed in months. One talked about a lake where he used to fish with his brother, another about a bakery that sold the best bread he'd ever tasted. Conversations you don't have when you expect to die tomorrow. That mindset doesn't disappear just because someone says positions. Across the square, civilians huddle in doorways again, faces pale with betrayal. A man clutches his wife's arm, whispering urgently. Children are pulled back into cellars they'd just emerged from minutes earlier. Marie Fisher, who had dared to sweep her stoop not long ago, now kneels beside an overturned cart, pressing her hands over her ears as shots echo sporadically from another block. She had believed it too. Everyone had. The idea of surrender had slipped into the city like a draft through broken walls. It didn't arrive loudly. It didn't declare itself. It settled into conversations, into gestures, into the way soldiers stopped flinching at every distant sound. Checkpoints reflected it. The barriers were still there, but not tight, not watchful, not ready for a fight that was supposed to be finished. And now that mistake weighs heavily. A runner arrives breathless from a neighboring unit, helmet askew, face streaked with soot. "Contact on the eastern road," he blurts. "Not heavy, but organized. They pulled back when we pushed." Meyer absorbs the information, jaw tight. "So they're still moving." "Yes, sir." Weiss exchanges a look with another sergeant. Both men are thinking the same thing. If surrender was real, this wouldn't be happening. Unless... The thought is interrupted by a sudden burst of gunfire from deeper in the city. Not close, but close enough. Civilians scream again.
Meyer curses under his breath. He keys the radio, demanding clarity that still doesn't come. The higher command is quiet, or overwhelmed, or divided. That's the most dangerous moment in any war. Not when orders are brutal, but when they are unclear. Weiss watches as two soldiers reset a barricade they had casually shifted aside earlier that morning. Their movements are faster now, more deliberate. Regret shows in the way they avoid each other's eyes. They all know what nearly happened. They almost let the war walk right through them. Marie peeks out from behind the cart, eyes darting across the square. She looks at Weiss, then at the barricade, then at the radio operator shouting into his handset. "Is it finished?" she asks in a small voice. Weiss hesitates. He wants to say yes, everyone does, but the street answers for him. Another crack of rifle fire, another echo, another reminder that the line between over and not yet can be measured in seconds. He shakes his head gently. "Not yet," she says. Her shoulders slump, but she nods. She understands now. Understanding hurts less than false hope. The sun climbs higher, illuminating the damage more clearly. The city looks no different than it did an hour ago, but the mood has shifted again. Hope has been retracted, replaced by something colder, more careful. And somewhere far beyond this square, a final decision is still moving through command channels, an order written, delayed, rerouted, misunderstood, an order that will decide whether this city bleeds one last time.
The message arrives without ceremony. No drum roll, no warning. Just a clipped transmission that cuts through the background noise like a verdict. Confirmed hostile regrouping within city limits. Engage and clear all sectors. This is not a ceasefire situation. The words hit harder than gunfire. Lieutenant Meyer stares at the radio operator as if waiting for him to correct it, to laugh, to say it's a mistake. It doesn't happen. The operator looks back, eyes wide, hands frozen on the handset. He repeats the message slowly, as if that might change its meaning. It doesn't. Weiss feels a strange hollowness spread through his chest. Not fear, not anger, disbelief. The war has been running on borrowed time for days now. Everyone knows it. Every soldier feels it in the way they move, the way they speak, the way they imagine the future again. This order feels out of place, like a relic from an earlier chapter that refuses to stay buried. Meyer exhales sharply and snaps into motion. "All right," he says. "You heard it. We clear. No blind advances, no heroics." No one cheers. No one questions it either. That's how discipline works when emotion fails. The squads split and move through the streets with practiced efficiency, boots crunching over debris, rifles raised again. Windows that had just opened slam shut, doors bolt. The city recoils as if struck. Marie Fisher pulls her children back into the cellar, heart pounding. She presses them close, whispering reassurances she no longer believes herself. "They said it was over," her youngest whispers. Marie closes her eyes. "So did we," she answers. Weiss advances down a side street with his men, scanning alleys that had seemed harmless minutes earlier. The danger now feels worse than before, not because the enemy is stronger, but because the context has shifted. Everyone thought this was finished. That makes every shot heavier. They reach a small courtyard where rubble has been hastily cleared into a makeshift firing position. Fresh footprints mark the dust. Someone was here recently. Weiss signals for a halt. A sudden burst of fire erupts from behind a collapsed wall. Weiss dives instinctively, rolling behind a stone planter as bullets chew into the masonry where he'd been standing seconds before. "Contact!" he shouts. The return fire is immediate, disciplined. The enemy doesn't hold long. They withdraw again, melting away through gaps in the ruins like they know the city better than anyone expected. That's when it becomes clear. This isn't chaos, it's intention. The enemy units aren't trying to take ground. They're testing, probing, looking for weakness created by belief. Belief that the war was over. Weiss feels a cold clarity settle in. This isn't a last stand, it's a last chance to delay, to escape, to leave chaos behind. The final order isn't about victory, it's about control. Meyer radios the observation post. They're not pushing, they're moving through us. There's a pause, static crackles, then a reply, slower this time, heavier. Understood. New directive pending. Weiss fires again as movement flickers between shadows. He doesn't aim at faces anymore. He aims at motion, at threat. The city reverberates with scattered gunfire now, no longer centralized. This isn't a battle. It's a series of collisions between people who shouldn't still be fighting. Civilians huddle in darkness again, listening to footsteps above them. Not marching, running. Every sound carries betrayal with it. Marie grips the cellar stairs, knuckles white, listening to the conflict unfold overhead. She had begun to plan dinner. She had begun to imagine tomorrow. Now she imagines survival again. Above ground, Weiss checks his watch. He doesn't know why. The numbers feel meaningless. How long can a war last once everyone wants it to end? Longer than anyone expects. The radio comes alive again. Hold positions, the voice says. Command reassessing. Reassessing. Weiss almost laughs. Men are bleeding, civilians are hiding, and somewhere someone is reassessing. Another burst of fire erupts at the far end of the street, followed by shouting. Weiss's squad moves towards it, boots slipping on dust and broken tile. They arrive just in time to see a small enemy group retreat through a gap between buildings, disappearing into smoke. No bodies left behind, no trophies, just absence. The realization hits Weiss with brutal clarity. This isn't the end of the war, it's the war refusing to let go. And until someone somewhere accepts that responsibility, cities like this will keep paying the price for decisions made too late.
The city tightens around the sound of boots. Not marching boots, running ones. Orders ripple outward in fragments. Hand signals, shouted instructions, sharp gestures in doorways and stairwells. The calm that had briefly settled over the streets is gone now, replaced by something harsher than fear. Regret. Sergeant Weiss feels it with every step as his squad advances past buildings they had already mentally abandoned. This ground was supposed to be behind them, a memory, a footnote at the end of a long campaign. Instead, it has become active again, alive with threat. They pass the checkpoint where soldiers had smoked openly that morning. The cigarettes lie crushed on the pavement now, forgotten, trampled into ash. A machine gun has been recentered, its crew crouched low, eyes sharp, fingers tight on the grips. Discipline has returned, but it arrived too late to erase what was lost. From the upper floors of a nearby building, gunfire erupts suddenly, shattering windows and sending glass cascading into the street. Weiss dives behind a burned-out car, heart slamming as rounds tear through the metal frame. "Second floor!" someone shouts. A grenade arcs upward, disappearing into the window. The explosion that follows is brutal and final, echoing through the street like punctuation. Silence returns, briefly. Weiss pushes forward, boots crunching over shattered masonry. He feels heavier now, slower, not physically, but mentally. Every movement is burdened by the knowledge that this didn't have to happen. Nearby, Lieutenant Meyer stands in a doorway issuing rapid commands, his voice steady, but his eyes darker than before. He has crossed a line without realizing it, the line where leadership stops being about progress and becomes about containment, holding damage. Civilians are nowhere to be seen now. The streets have swallowed them whole. Doors that were open hours ago are sealed tight. Windows are black voids. The city has learned its lesson again. Marie Fisher listens from the cellar as explosions shake dust from the ceiling. Her children cling to her, eyes wide, breath shallow. She presses her hands over their heads, shielding them from falling debris and truth alike.
They had come upstairs earlier. They had seen light. Now they are underground again. Above them, boots thunder past. Someone shouts in a language she doesn't understand. Another voice cries out in pain, then falls silent. The war has reclaimed the house. Weiss's squad clears another building, room by room. They move efficiently now, anger sharpening their focus. No one talks about surrender anymore. That word has been erased from the vocabulary of the afternoon. On the far side of the square, a unit attempts to establish a defensive line, but the enemy slips through gaps like smoke, refusing to present a clear front. Shots ring out from unexpected angles. The fighting fractures into isolated pockets. This is what happens when endings are delayed. They become messier than beginnings. The radio crackles again. Higher command is issuing revised instructions, belatedly, tightening rules that should never have been loosened. Re-establish full checkpoints, lock down movement, treat all contacts as hostile until confirmed otherwise. Weiss hears it and feels something bitter twist in his gut. They already are. A soldier collapses near the edge of the square, hit by a round fired from somewhere unseen. Medics rush forward, dragging him back behind cover. His helmet rolls free, coming to rest against a curb. No one goes to retrieve it. The city absorbs the moment without comment. Lieutenant Meyer crouches beside Weiss briefly, voice low. This ends today, one way or another. Weiss nods. He doesn't ask which way. They push on, street by street, room by room, minute by minute. By late afternoon, resistance thins. The probing attacks fade into silence. Enemy elements withdraw beyond the city limits, leaving behind only echoes and spent casings. But the cost has already been paid. As the gunfire dwindles, civilians remain hidden. They do not emerge this time. The trust that had begun to form is shattered by confusion, by reversal, by the cruel timing of orders that arrived after belief took root. Marie does not leave the cellar when the shooting stops. She waits. She waits until the sound of boots slows, until voices lower, until the city feels empty again. Above ground, Weiss slumps against a wall, exhaustion crashing down on him. His hands shake slightly as he checks his rifle, muscle memory carrying him through the motion. The war has not ended here today. It has simply reminded everyone that it still has teeth. And somewhere beyond the ruins, the consequences of one final order are still unfolding.
Evening settles without apology. The sun drops behind the ruined skyline, casting long shadows that stretch like fingers across the streets. Smoke thins into a gray haze that clings to walls and broken roofs. The city exhales again, but this time it does so carefully, as if afraid of being punished for it. Sergeant Weiss sits on the steps of a collapsed stairwell, helmet resting between his boots. His hands are filthy, knuckles scraped raw. He flexes his fingers slowly, testing them, grounding himself in sensation. Nearby, a medic finishes bandaging a wounded soldier, movements quick and practiced, eyes refusing to linger. No one speaks about victory. No one speaks about surrender. The war has stripped those words of meaning here. Lieutenant Meyer moves through the checkpoint, checking on his men one by one. He pauses at Weiss, nods once, then looks out toward the street where the final exchange of fire had taken place hours earlier. They were never trying to take the city, Meyer says quietly. Weiss looks up. No, sir. They just needed us to think it was over. Weiss nods again. The truth settles heavy between them. This final clash wasn't about territory. It wasn't about ideology or even survival. It was about momentum, about keeping control just long enough to escape, to dissolve, to deny the enemy a clean ending. And it worked. Across the square, soldiers rebuild the checkpoint they had relaxed that morning. Sandbags are stacked higher now. Barriers are tighter. Everything is correct again. Too correct. Civilians do not return. Doors remain closed. Windows stay dark. The brief reappearance of normal life has been erased as if it never happened. Marie Fisher listens from behind her cellar door, heart still racing despite the quiet above. She doesn't ask if it's safe anymore. She waits for proof, and proof has become expensive. Her youngest child whispers, "Is it finished now?" Marie hesitates. She has learned something today that no one had taught her before. Hope must be timed carefully. "I don't know," she says softly. Outside, a patrol moves past her house, boots steady, rifles ready. The sound fades into the distance. Then another patrol. Then silence. The city lies in a kind of emotional no man's land, no longer fully at war, but not yet at peace. The last order has done its damage, and now it lingers, heavy and unresolved. Weiss stands and walks to the intersection, scanning the road where enemy elements had slipped away. He imagines them moving through alleys and fields beyond the city, shedding uniforms, blending into the landscape. The war will end soon. Everyone knows that now. But it won't end cleanly. That illusion died here today. Meyer receives another transmission as darkness deepens. This one is calmer, measured. Hold positions overnight. Expect no further contact. Weiss watches Meyer lower the radio slowly, as if unsure whether to trust it. The last order changed everything. Not because it prolonged the war, but because it revealed how fragile endings are. This city will not remember today as liberation. It will remember it as interruption. Hope raised and cut down by voices too far away to hear the consequences of their timing. As Weiss settles into a night watch position, rifle across his knees, he stares into the dark streets and thinks about home, about the moment he imagined earlier when he believed the war was done. That moment feels distant now, smaller, just delayed. The war did not end here, but it almost did, and that almost will haunt everyone who felt it.
Night deepens, and with it comes a silence that feels heavier than gunfire ever did. Not the hopeful quiet of morning, not the dangerous quiet before an attack. This is something else. A silence weighted with restraint. Sergeant Weiss stands watch at the intersection, street lamp light catching the dust in the air like drifting ash. His breath fogs faintly. Somewhere down the block, water drips steadily from a broken pipe, each drop echoing too loudly in the stillness. The city almost sleeps. Almost. Every window is dark, every doorway sealed. The civilians have retreated deeper than before, folding themselves into the safest spaces they know. Cellars, back rooms, corners where sound dies quickly. Marie Fisher sits on the cellar steps, wrapped in a coat she hasn't worn since winter, hands clasped tightly together. She listens, not for noise, but for its absence. The absence that tells her no one is running, no one is shouting, no one is firing. Her children have fallen asleep against her despite themselves, exhaustion finally winning where fear could not. She strokes her daughter's hair slowly, carefully, as if afraid to disturb the fragile balance of the night. Above ground, discipline has returned fully now. Checkpoints are locked tight, fields of fire are re-established, patrols overlap. Orders are followed without question, without conversation. The illusion of peace has been stripped away,
replaced by structure and procedure. But something has changed. Weiss feels it in the way men move, precise, efficient, emotionally distant. The earlier softness is gone, not replaced by rage, but by caution sharpened into mistrust. Endings are no longer discussed. Lieutenant Meyer joins Weiss at the checkpoint, hands tucked into his coat, eyes scanning the street. "I thought we were done this morning," he says quietly. Weiss nods. So did everyone. Meyer exhales slowly. "That's what scares me." They stand in silence for a moment, listening to the city breathe shallowly. Somewhere far off, a single shot echoes, distant, isolated, unanswered. It might be nothing. It might be everything. No one moves. No one reacts. The sound fades. The war, even now, refuses to fully let go. Marie stiffens at the sound, then relaxes only when nothing follows. She has learned not to react too quickly, to wait for confirmation, to survive uncertainty. That lesson will not leave her when the war ends. Weiss adjusts his grip on his rifle, eyes fixed on the road ahead. He thinks about the morning again, the cigarettes, the laughter, the white cloth in the window. He realizes now how dangerous that moment truly was, not tactically, emotionally. Because for a brief time, everyone allowed themselves to imagine a future without war, and that imagination weakened the present. The city almost slept, almost woke up, almost crossed the line between war and peace, but the last command held it back, trapping it in between. As the night wears on, no further contact comes. The enemy has vanished, the probing has ended. Whatever purpose the final engagement served, it has been fulfilled. The war is winding down, just not here, not yet. Weiss watches the sky lighten imperceptibly at the horizon, the earliest hint of dawn beginning to push against the darkness. Another day is coming, and with it, the knowledge that this city will never remember the war as something that ended cleanly. It will remember the day it almost did.
Morning returns carefully. Not with celebration, not with relief, with restraint. The light creeps over the ruins the same way it always has, slowly, without regard for what the night held. Sergeant Weiss blinks against it, eyes gritty from another watch spent half expecting violence that never came. His body aches in the familiar way, the ache that tells him he is still here, still waiting. The city remains sealed. Windows stay shuttered. Doors do not open. The lesson of yesterday has already settled into the stone. Hope is dangerous when it comes too early. Lieutenant Meyer receives the morning transmission standing beside the jeep, radio held close as if volume alone could change the meaning. Weiss watches his face carefully, reading the tension in his jaw, the way his shoulders rise and then slowly fall. "This one's real," Meyer says at last. No qualifiers, no hesitation. Weiss doesn't ask how he knows. Some messages carry weight differently. This one does. The enemy has withdrawn beyond contact range. Command confirms it across multiple channels. No regrouping, no probing, no last-minute maneuvers. This time, the order is not reversed. Weapons remain ready, but hands loosen slightly. Not enough to invite danger, just enough to breathe. Marie Fisher waits longer than anyone else. She does not rush upstairs. She does not open the door at the first hint of quiet. She sits on the cellar steps until the sound of boots changes from patrol rhythm to routine movement, until voices soften, until the city feels empty in a different way. Then she climbs the stairs. The street looks unchanged at first. Rubble, smoke stains, bullet scars marking the walls like punctuation. But something is missing. Urgency. She steps outside cautiously. Others follow,
one by one, then in small groups. No one cheers, no one waves flags. They simply stand in the open, absorbing the fact that nothing is happening, that nothing holds. Weiss watches from the checkpoint as civilians reappear with the same careful dignity they vanished with. He recognizes Marie and gives her a nod. She returns it. They share an understanding forged in the space between false endings and real ones. A man retrieves the broom he abandoned the day before. He resumes sweeping without comment. A woman opens a window and lets fresh air in. Somewhere, a kettle begins to boil. Ordinary sounds return, not as rebellion, but as confirmation. Later that morning, Weiss is ordered to pack up. The city is no longer a priority. The front has moved. The war is closing in on its final chapters elsewhere. This place will be remembered only briefly in reports. Another engagement logged, another directive followed. But Weiss knows better. He takes one last look down the avenue where the final shots were fired, the place where belief nearly outpaced reality, where one order turned a quiet mourning into bloodshed. Wars don't end cleanly. They fray, they hesitate, they cling to relevance until forced to release it. As his unit moves out, Marie watches them go from her doorway. She does not wave, she does not cry. She simply watches, because watching is how she survived the years before, and it is how she will survive whatever comes next. The city does not celebrate that day. It rests. It remembers the cost of believing too soon. And when the official end finally arrives, days later, confirmed beyond doubt, the people here accept it carefully. They have learned that endings are not defined by broadcasts or rumors or even orders. They are defined by what does not return. The gunfire does not return. The shouting does not return. The running does not return. Only then does the city sleep. Not because it was told to, but because, at last, it can.
If this story stayed with you, take a moment to let us know. A simple like helps this history reach people who may never have heard it. It tells the algorithm that these moments still matter. Subscribe if you want to stay with us. Here, we uncover the moments in the Second World War when everything changed, when there was no return. These are not just battles. They are human realizations, sacrifices, and truths buried beneath decades of noise. If you feel comfortable, leave a comment. Tell us where you're watching from. The United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, or somewhere else entirely. Tell us if someone in your family lived through this war. You're not just watching a video, you're helping keep these memories alive. Because once the stories disappear, there really is no return. Thank you for watching.